Recently, we've heard from city leaders about how the city of Santa Maria is dependent on growth. Today, we sat down with Community Development Director Larry Appel to talk about that growth and where the city will be in the future. All right, cool. So recently, we heard from the city manager during that UCSB North County Economic Development Summit that the future of Santa Maria is dependent on growth.
Right.
So I guess thinking about the future of the city and what it could look like. So that's why we're here talking with you about that. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the city manager's comments about how the city is dependent on growth.
Sure. The city has grown over the years by annexing land from the county. That's the only way we can grow. And so what has happened over the years is we go through the LAFCO process, Local Agency Formation Commission, and they will approve the expansion for the city in different chunks of land. And we've annexed thousands of acres over the years. And so we're at a point now where we have looked at what our existing remaining undeveloped land consists of, and realize that over time, if we want to continue the growth pattern that we have, we're going to need to do additional expansions or annexations. And so for right now, the city has a build out of approximately 120 to 126,000. And if you saw the recent reports, I think we're at 104 now. So there's room to grow, and that's all based on taking the raw land, seeing what zoning it has on it, and using a multiplier effect for industrial and also for residential. And you figure out how many more homes or how many more square feet of industrial you're going to get, and that builds out your city. And so we've calculated that. We've also made sure that we have the support facilities that go along with that, the services, so water and wastewater. And just checking this morning, we're sitting at about 124 to 126,000 population that the utilities will cover. So we're right in the ballpark for doing a complete build out of the city without having to go any further. But as Mr. Hayden mentioned, to be able to provide additional services and stuff, you really need to find additional tax base. And so, for instance, the Enos Ranchos development that's coming up, there's a lot of retail in there that's going to have sales tax in addition to the property tax of all of the development within that area. So the same thing is true as if we were to expand the city's boundaries, we get a chance to then, in addition to providing services, we also get the additional sales tax and property tax.
Right. Where is that additional grow out space you're talking about? Which direction could the city go?
Well, right now LAFCO told the city after the last annexation that they didn't want us to grow east or west. We can't grow north because we've got the river. We can't grow south because Orchid's already developed. So we have to go back and revisit the issue of growing east or west. As part of that annexation, they asked us to put a no growth line on our maps. And so if you look at our land use maps, it basically says no growth or ag preserve or something, some type of a limitation that's just a notation. Now, any Tuesday night, 3 council members could say we don't want to have that on there anymore, and they could remove that, but we still have to go to LAFCO to address any expansions that we're considering. So back to the specific question, where do we go and how do we do it? We think it's most logical to move east from the city right now because we've got the 101 running at the side of our city, basically. Most cities have a freeway in the middle so that they can take advantage of the transportation corridor from both sides. And so if and when we do expand, it's looking like we'd be going to the east, starting most likely at Main Street and then heading down towards Betteravia.
Why were those original restrictions about east and west put in place?
LAFCO is made up of I believe 3 Board of Supervisor members and then members of various cities within the county. And they had a very strong sense of loss of agriculture. And so they wanted to make sure that with the expansion that we were doing, we were moving into agricultural land for the last expansion, but that at the same time we'd respect the existing remaining agriculture. So one of the things I've thought of, I've been here since '83, and so I've seen a lot of growth. When you drive on 101 going north, all of the flower fields and the berry hoops and the strawberries, everything that's on the east side of the freeway, that was just sandhills when I moved here. And it's been through the technology that they have learned over the years of how to put the fertilizer into the irrigation water, and then using the plastic hoops or the plastic covers for the strawberries and stuff, that's taken totally wasteland that couldn't grow anything into very fertile soil. So while we have lost some of the farmland closer to the city, there are areas outside the city boundary that are expanding. So it seems like there's a good balance going on there.
Right. So the potential growth and the potential population growth that's not happening, projected to happen, will that happen on the same kind of level? Will we grow out enough to create housing for the folks that we're projecting will come to Santa Maria?
The growth is all based on the economy. You know, the city is very pro-growth. We have very pro-growth planning commission and city council that want to allow developers to build their projects consistent with what we have in our land use maps. These maps here and here that show what the build out is supposed to be in the different areas. There are some jurisdictions that try to restrict development,
Right.
and the city really hasn't taken that approach. They've said, if we have vacant land and it's zoned for housing, let's put housing on it. And so it really isn't a restriction on the part of the city, because we've always been able to keep up with the resources, the water, the wastewater, garbage, all of the recycling things. All of those have been in step with the growth we've had. So it really is a matter of economics. And so when you have a drop in the economy, 2006, 2007, you end up where the city is still willing to move forward, but because of the economy, the developers take a step back and wait things out. So to move to the east of the freeway, there's really no set pattern for how quickly that would happen. We would do a master plan for the area, we do specific plans, and so it would be done at the same level that we did for, let's say, the Enos Ranchos project, and have all of the areas designated, and then the developer can come in and do their actual development, the plan development or the track maps to complete the project.
Cool. I wonder what the city would look like then. Are we trying to localize residential and gather commercial uses, or are we going for a mixed scheme?
The city has to provide services for everyone, but by far the most used services are for residential uses. Police, fire, all the emergency services get a lot more calls to residential properties than they do to commercial or industrial. So it wouldn't make sense just building houses, because we wouldn't be able to provide the services based on the amount of money we get back. We don't get any sales tax from housing. We only get the property tax, and that's 10% of 1%. So very little sales tax or property tax comes back for residential. But when you have commercial, like we do in the new shopping centers that are being expanded, you get a much larger percent. You get, I think, 1%, well, 1.25% because of our Measure U money for cities use. And same thing if you have industrial facilities, if they are doing retail sales, then we get the 1% of the retail sales as well. So there's a lot of reasons why you want to mix the use, where you can have just a good balance of residential, commercial, industrial, and then you have to have the services along with that. You're going to have the proper number of schools for the area. One thing we're trying to do when we're looking to move to the east is we know that the city council is looking to have a 4-year college. They want to expand and be able to, because we have 100,000 people here.
Right.
There are ways of getting 4-year schools or satellite schools even, and so we're wanting to keep that in the mix to make sure that we'll have land available for either the expansion of Hancock to do a 4-year program, or for some other school to come in and to be able to build.
Right.
We also know Marion would like to expand, and they just built their new facility, but they're at capacity already.
Right.
And so they're looking for things. And so we're taking into consideration those needs as well as the needs for the community. With the new Enos Ranchos project, you've got a lot of development right there along the freeway. Well, we're thinking possibly to put balancing retail on the other side of the freeway. So, as you're driving through, you've got a full area of retail that's available to the public.
Right. Speaking of the Enos Ranches project, that's a whole kind of built-in community once it all gets done, right?
Yeah, it's because it has the residential component to it, and the school,
and the school,
and a park,
right.
So,
so it seems like is that kind of like a rubber stamp kind of plan for the growth to pair it all together?
I don't think it was rubber stamped. I think there was a lot of foresight that went into the original
right.
development.
I'm not saying that. I'm talking about the future growth. Are we looking at like creating those communities like that?
It would be good to repeat something like that. Yeah. And the ratio that is obviously favors the city because of the tax dollar and the property tax.
Right. So it ultimately creates different communities within the larger community. So that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking about that, just maybe on instead of the long-term stuff, the future stuff, really in the Enos Ranchos project, when the Costco and stuff moves, and I guess this is a big issue on currently now because we haven't grown yet, we haven't annexed any properties, so you've got some infill to do.
Yeah.
So, like, what's going to happen to Costco when it moves to its new building? Are we helping them find a new tenant, or?
Well, we're available. The chamber's available. We know the owner, and if the owner needs our help, we'll certainly give him some assistance. I think what might happen is if he can't find someone that takes the entire building, then he'd need to work with us to do a tenant improvement that would allow like a separation of the building into 2 or more spaces that could accommodate a size of a business that would be able to use that.
I went to the Economic Development Summit too, and one of the things that Rick Hayden talked about was the change in that percentage that the city gets in property taxes. You've been here since '83?
I've lived in town since '83. Yeah, I haven't been with the city since then.
In your position is in city government, how is that change in the distribution of property taxes to cities changing to the state side? How has that affected growth and the need to attract retail spaces and commercial space?
I know cities in the past have received a higher percentage of the that 6% or 8% or whatever you're dealing with. It's just over the years, it's been a taking by the state in a lot of different areas. Right. They would take something and say, well, this is just going to be a short-term borrow, and then we'll give it back to you. And sure enough, they gave it back to us, but 2 days later they took it again. That kind of a thing. And with the redevelopment agencies, we had our 2 parking structures that the city paid for themselves. It wasn't the developer of the mall. We paid for those, and we've been paying back on our loans up until last year. And we were then going to be using our redevelopment money to pay ourselves back for all of that stuff. We couldn't do it until they were paid for.
Sure.
And so that was another example. Then when they got rid of the RDAs, then we lost on that too. So there have been a number of things. And then with the well, it's not the state's fault, but it's the pension programs and stuff, how those have not done well. And so for each year now, we have been adding about $1 million to our budget to help balance out the poor investments that had been done in the past with the retirement program. So there are those types of things. So that's why we came in with that quarter-cent sales tax. We let people know what they're going to get for that money, and we've performed. They've gotten the extra police officers, the extra firemen. We've got 2 new fire stations through the Obama Buck program, whatever. RICRA or something or other. I forgot what it was officially called. But we've done a lot with the money that we've had, but it has been very difficult over the years because everything seems to be going the state direction instead of back this way.
Right.
And has there been, what has had a higher impact on the city's ability to grow or control its growth? Is it the loss of that property tax funding, or is it that unfunded liability that the pension debt creates?
Well, the unfunded liability is a huge factor for every jurisdiction that is part of the PERS program. But the growth in the city is not really reflected by the money that the state is taking because we still have to provide services for those that are already here. Okay. You may have to take a look at, we have things called AB 1600 fees, and it's a fee that a developer pays let me give you an example. If you know you have certain traffic improvements that are needed throughout the city to get you to your maximum build-out density, like you're going to need a turn lane or you're going to need a signalization or something, figure out how much that costs, and then go back and look and see how much development is still in the queue to do that. Now, even though there's 100,000 people already here that have put those intersections in a bad situation, the only place we've got to get the extra money is from the new development. So then it's divided through by that development, and then the new developers pay that amount. That's kind of how we've taken the responsibility ourselves of trying to be able to meet the needs for the services in the city. So whether it's making traffic smoother or having sufficient firemen and police officers, those dollars are what help us out.
Thanks for watching. I'm Logan B. Anderson. For more information about city government, follow me on Twitter at Logan B. Anderson or visit SantaMariaTimes.com.